Practically everyone's driving one, and everyone's mother knows of them. I'm talking about the crossover SUV that has taken over the automotive industry by storm over the last few years. Why? Well, because it is really the car that can really do all three things: versatility, styling, and performance. Now, the high demand also means stiff competition between manufacturers, and the all-new 2019 Acura RDX really shows this point really well. Now, the Acura RDX has been completely revamped from ground level up, especially the styling. I mean, check out the front hood, the facade. Look at the polygonal shaped front grille. It kind of gives it this kind of a unique, holographic 3D look that's really unique. And I especially like the new design of the jewel-eyed headlamps, as well as kind of the lower air curtains and LED exterior headlamps that kind of complements the whole front hood really well. Now, what I really like the most is also the interior. The last model, the 2018, had more of a kind of a flat Jane approach with the console, and everything was kind of a homogeneous matte black. But the 2019, everything is much more curvaceous, and it really gives a much more depth to the human eye, and it really creates kind of a more sophisticated look. Now, there's also a lot of different choices of materials as well, especially with kind of the new leather material that's kind of a tan brown color, as well as a semi-gloss kind of an oak style grained wood trim that really accentuates kind of the senses of your visual aspects really well, and kind of gives you that really luxurious feel. So what I also really love about this car are these beautiful perforated leather bucket seats with these massive lateral supports that really hold you in tight like a kangaroo pouch. And believe me when I say this, a manufacturer would not invest the money to really, compromise the comfort for this tight squeeze unless there is some level of performance capability built within this machine. So the question is, how well does it drive? Well, let's find out. Now, the most notable differences between the last year's model and this year's model is also the engine configuration that's used. Last year was the V6 naturally aspirated engine, while this year's opted for a 4-cylinder turbocharged engine instead. Now, there's obviously compromises, especially with the V6 you have more horsepower, but in the V4 turbocharged you have more low-end torque. It's also lighter, and it also has better fuel economy. Now, you actually get 11 and 8.6 liters per 100 kilometers for city and highway. That's the EPA rating. Well, you might think, that's, because you're opting for a V4 engine, you're gonna certainly get better fuel economy, right? Well, that is true to some extent, but not as much as you would think. But you do certainly get better improvements in fuel economy while you're driving in a city. You get around like 6% better in fuel economy driving in a city, and about 3% better improvements in fuel economy driving on the highway. And off the bat, what I really like about Acura is kind of like a really organic driving feel. Everything kind of feels very, very natural, very smooth, very silent, and certainly no compromise in luxury as well, especially what it's marketed for. So the 4-cylinder turbocharged engine outputs 272 horsepower and 280 pound-foot of torque, which is actually not bad, and it's actually almost similar to the V6 naturally aspirated engine in the previous model. It's a little bit different in the sense that you don't really get that power on demand, especially from a naturally aspirated engine. You do have to be a little bit more patient, kind of to wait for the turbochargers to spool up and to generate enough pressure to, build up the RPM and maintain, that horsepower output. But still, it's really not that bad, and you still also get, pretty good horsepower, especially when I'm pressing hard on the accelerator pedal. You really still, get that level of power, and there's really no shortage of power either, especially when I'm pressing hard on the accelerator pedal. Now I can also switch to Sport Plus mode, which is kind of a cool feature where everything kind of sharpens up. It sharpens up the steering wheel as well as the throttle response, and I can also switch to sequential shift mode by pressing on the drive and sequential shift mode down on this gear shifter panel button. And now I have control of the transmission through these paddle shifters, and if I downshift a few gears down to 4, 3, ooh, ow, I get much more control fine-grained control of the automatic transmission. And noting on the automatic transmission, you don't get 6 gears, you don't get 7, you don't get 8, you don't get 9, but you get 10 gears to shift through. And to be honest, I mean, that is, pretty excessive, especially for the car that we're driving now. And I'm gonna be honest, most of the time I'm actually gear hunting through the gears to figure out, really what gear am I supposed to be in. And despite the fact that this crossover SUV actually has a center of gravity because of the increased ride height, but because of it has torque vectoring system involved, where it applies more power on the outside rear wheels to kind of push the car more into the corner to prevent understeer. That actually works pretty well. I mean, if I try to swerve the car left or right, it actually behaves pretty well and pretty obediently. And also these lateral supports that I was talking about earlier really hold you in tight to kind of like prevent you from being thrown around in the corners. Now this car's also got what's called the automatic start-stop feature that can either be turned on or turned off. So what this does is when you're coming to a red stoplight to a complete stop, then what happens is the engine actually shuts off to improve fuel economy, but also gives you a quieter cabin space, especially when you're waiting at a red light. And you see the engine just shut off, and kind of everything is just much more silence, and there's no vibration from the engine. Everything is just much more relaxed to give you a kind of a sense of a more luxury ride. And what I've always really liked about the Acura brand in itself is not only the quality, but also the good, the well balance between quality, comfort, and performance that it has to offer. And the RDX certainly shows no exception. I mean, the quality within the cabin space especially is superb. I absolutely love it. It's very simple, clean, aesthetically pleasing. So another neat feature about what's new with the 2019 Acura RDX is this new True Touch trackpad user interface. Similar to what you find in a laptop, and also kind of a copycat, I'm not going to lie, to the Lexus implementation. But essentially it's a trackpad that allows you to navigate through the user interface on this 10.2-inch touchscreen. So how it works is you can go into the home screen, and where you press on the trackpad has a direct positional mapping to where the user interfaces or the menu boxes are located on the 10.2 touchscreen. So if I want to access the menu on the lower left corner, I can basically just hold my finger onto the left part, the bottom left part of the touchpad. It'll automatically detect and highlight that menu box, or I can slide over. And so you kind of see everything is a direct positional mapping that is reflective of where all the menu boxes are located on the 10.2 touchscreen, which is kind of neat and pretty new. I haven't seen this implementation anywhere else in all the cars I've driven, so it's certainly a pretty nice feature to have. So all in all, I'm really impressed. I really like the 2019 Acura RDX and where it's heading. I mean, there are just minor quirks that they can certainly work on improving. For example, the responsiveness of the infotainment system. Still, it's not that bad. Everything is pretty well defined, and I'm actually pretty surprised that they can actually come up with such a a pretty near perfect car, especially on their first iteration. Although I think certainly fuel economy and the responsiveness of the touchscreen can certainly be improved a bit, but overall I'm certainly very happy with what the 2019 all-new Acura RDX has to offer. Alright guys, well that's my take on the 2019 Acura RDX. Let me know what you guys think, and until next time.